When the man who destroyed you walks back into your life on Christmas Eve, you have two choices: run or finally demand the truth. Mira Halden thought she'd buried her past 10 years ago, until Damon Varga, the ex-husband who crushed her heart with calculated cruelty, steps into a candlelit winter service like a ghost with unfinished business. He doesn't come with apologies. He comes with secrets that could shatter everything she's rebuilt. And when she reveals the daughter he never knew existed, the stakes become impossible to ignore. Follow this story to the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story reaches. The first snowfall of December always felt like forgiveness to Mira Halden, soft, quiet, erasing the hard edges of the world. She stood at her classroom window, watching fat flakes drift past the glass while 23 second graders shrieked their way through the final minutes before winter break. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. Tomorrow she could breathe. "Miss Halden, can we sing Jingle Bells one more time?" Sophie Turner bounced on her toes, gap-toothed grin splitting her face. Mira smiled, the kind that came easier these days. "Pack up first, then we'll sing it on our way to the buses." The chaos of small bodies grabbing backpacks and art projects filled the room with beautiful, ordinary noise. This was her life now, steady, predictable, safe. She taught music to elementary students in a town small enough that everyone knew her name, but kind enough not to ask too many questions about the years before she'd arrived. She had a daughter, a modest apartment above the bakery on Main Street, and a routine that kept the past exactly where it belonged, locked away. By 4 o'clock, the school had emptied. Mira locked her classroom, pulled her coat tight against the cold, and walked the 3 blocks to Lena's after-school program. Her daughter sat cross-legged on the floor, organizing a collection of rocks by size, with the serious focus of a tiny scientist. "Ready, Bug?" Mira asked. Lena looked up, dark eyes bright. "Can we get hot chocolate?" It's practically a law on the day before Christmas Eve. They walked hand in hand down Main Street, past windows strung with lights and wreaths tied with red velvet bows. The town dressed itself up like a greeting card every December, and Mira had learned to let herself enjoy it without waiting for the other shoe to drop. Lena chattered about her friend's new kitten, about the rock she'd found that might be quartz, about whether reindeer could actually fly, or if it was just a really good story. "I think it's magic," Mira said, pushing open the door to the cafe. The good kind. They ordered their drinks and claimed a corner table. Lena pulled out a library book about geology, and Mira watched her daughter's face, so focused, so fearless, and felt the familiar ache of gratitude mixed with grief. Lena had her father's eyes. Dark, intense, impossible to lie to. But she had Mira's stubbornness, her practicality, her refusal to accept things just because someone said so. She had no idea her father existed. Mira had told herself it was protection. Damon Varga had made it brutally clear he wanted nothing to do with her. The divorce papers had arrived 6 weeks after their wedding, delivered by a lawyer who'd looked at her with something close to pity. No explanation, no conversation, just a cold legal dissolution and a check large enough to feel like an insult. She'd been 23, pregnant, and shattered. So she'd taken the money, left the city, and built a life where Damon Varga was just a name that didn't matter anymore. Lena knew her father wasn't in the picture. She'd asked questions when she was younger. Why didn't she have a dad like other kids? And Mira had answered honestly. Sometimes people aren't ready to be parents, and that's not the child's fault. Lena had accepted it with the same pragmatism she applied to everything else. But lately, the questions had shifted. Lena was 9 now, old enough to notice gaps, to wonder about genetics and medical history, and whether she had grandparents somewhere. Mira had promised to tell her more when she was ready. She just hadn't expected ready to arrive so soon. "Mom?" Lena looked up from her book. "Are we going to the concert tonight?" Mira blinked. "What concert?" "The one at the music hall. There's a poster by the library. It said Christmas Eve, Eve." Lena grinned at the phrase. Free admission. The old stone music hall had been Mira's sanctuary when she first moved to town, a place to sit in the dark and let someone else's music fill the spaces she couldn't. She hadn't been in months. Too busy, too settled, too afraid, maybe, of what it might stir up. "We could go," she said slowly. "If you want." "I want." Lena's certainty was absolute. So that evening, after dinner and a battle over whether Lena needed to wear the itchy holiday sweater her grandmother had sent, they walked through fresh snow to the music hall. The building stood at the edge of town, all weathered stone and tall windows, lit from within like a lantern. People streamed through the doors, shaking snow from their coats, voices hushed in that particular way crowds get before music begins. Inside, the hall smelled like old wood and candle wax. Rows of chairs faced a small stage where a string quartet was setting up. Mira guided Lena to seats near the back, close enough to hear, far enough to slip out if Lena got restless. The lights dimmed. The first violinist lifted her bow, and then the doors opened. Cold air rushed in, sharp and sudden. Heads turned. Mira glanced back, irritated at the disruption, and her heart stopped. Damon Vargas stood in the doorway. 10 years had carved him into someone harder, leaner. His dark hair was shorter, threaded with silver at the temples. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, pale against tanned skin. He wore a black coat over dark jeans, snow melting on his shoulders, and his eyes, those impossible dark eyes, swept the room with the watchful intensity of a man used to cataloging exits. They landed on Mira. The world narrowed. The quartet began to play, but she couldn't hear it, couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Damon's expression shifted. Recognition, something that might have been pain, then careful blankness. He walked down the aisle with measured steps, and Mira's body screamed at her to run, to grab Lena and disappear before he stopped at their row. "May I?" His voice was rougher than she remembered, scraped raw by years she knew nothing about. Lena looked up at him with curious eyes. Mira's hand tightened on her daughter's shoulder. "The row's full," she said, the lie obvious in the empty seats beside them. Damon's jaw tightened. "Mira." Her name in his mouth felt like a wound reopening. "You need to leave." "I will. After." He didn't move, didn't push, just stood there, waiting, and Mira realized with creeping horror that he wasn't going to make a scene. He was going to wait her out, and everyone around them was starting to notice the tension crackling between them. "Fine." She bit the word off. "Sit." He took the seat on her other side, leaving space between them. Lena had already lost interest, her attention back on the musicians. The quartet played Vivaldi, then Bach, pieces that had once meant something to Mira, and now just felt like torture because Damon Varga was sitting 3 feet away, and she couldn't think, couldn't plan, couldn't do anything but survive each measure until the music finally, mercifully ended. Applause filled the hall. People stood, gathering coats and children. Mira grabbed Lena's hand. "We're leaving." "But Mom." "Now." She pushed into the aisle, pulling Lena with her. Damon followed. She knew he would. She made it to the doors, out into the snow and the cold shock of night air, before his hand caught her elbow. "Don't touch me." She spun, putting herself between him and Lena. "Don't you dare." Lena's eyes went wide. Mira never used that tone, never lost control. Damon let go immediately, hands rising in surrender. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." "You don't get to ask me for anything." "I know." "You don't get to show up after 10 years." "I know." "Like you have any right." "Mira." He said her name quietly, and something in his voice made her stop. "Please. 5 minutes. Then I'll leave if you want me to." She should say no. She should take Lena and walk away and never look back, but fury was rising in her chest, hot and vicious. And maybe she wanted those 5 minutes too. Maybe she wanted to finally tell him exactly what he'd done to her. "Lena." She looked down at her daughter. "Go wait by that bench. Stay where I can see you." "Mom, who is it now, Bug?" Lena's face shuddered, hurt, confused, but she walked to the bench and sat, small and uncertain in the snow. Mira watched until she was settled, then turned back to Damon. "Talk." He looked older up close, tired. The scar wasn't the only mark on him. There was another along his jaw, faint but visible, and his knuckles were scarred like he'd spent years hitting things harder than him. He looked like a man who'd been through a war. "I'm sorry," he said. She laughed, bitter and sharp. "That's what you came to say? After a decade?" "No, I came to tell you the truth." He glanced at Lena, then back to Mira. "The divorce, the way I ended things, it wasn't real. It felt pretty real when your lawyer handed me papers and told me you never wanted to see me again. I know. That's what I needed you to believe. He exhaled, breath fogging in the cold. I needed everyone to believe it. Why? The question came out hard. Because they were going to kill you. The words hit like a punch. Mira stared at him, anger faltering into confusion. What? Damon's hands curled into fists at his sides. I told you my family was complicated. I didn't tell you they were dangerous. I thought I could keep you separate from that world, but I was wrong. 2 weeks after we got married, people I grew up with, people who worked for my father, they approached me. They wanted me to take over operations I'd been trying to get away from my whole life. I said no. So they threatened me. Mira's voice came out flat. They didn't threaten. They gave me proof they'd been watching you, photos of you leaving work, receipts from the cafe you liked. They knew your schedule, your friends, where you parked your car. His voice cracked. They told me I could play by their rules or they'd make sure you suffered for my disobedience. Slowly, Mira's legs felt weak. You could have told me and put you in more danger. They had eyes everywhere. If I'd tried to warn you, if I'd tried to run with you, they would have known. The only way to keep you safe was to make you irrelevant, to make them believe you meant nothing to me. He looked at her with devastation in his eyes. So I broke you. I made it public and ugly and cruel enough that no one would question it. I made sure you'd hate me so much you'd never try to find me. And then I left. Where did you go? Everywhere? Nowhere. I spent 3 years just staying ahead of them, making sure they believed I'd cut all ties. Then I started working with federal investigators. Gave them everything I knew about my father's network, about the people who'd threatened you. It took 4 more years to bring most of them down. He gestured to his scars. They didn't go quietly. Mira's mind spun. Why now? Why come back? Because the last of them went to prison 6 months ago. Because I've spent a decade making sure you were safe, and I finally have proof you are. Because... He stopped, looking past her to where Lena sat on the bench, kicking snow with her boots. Because I heard you were here. I didn't know about her. The bottom dropped out of Mira's stomach. How old is she? Damon's voice was barely a whisper. Mira could lie, should lie, but she was so tired of lies, even the ones meant to protect. 9. She watched him do the math, watched his face go pale. You were pregnant. It wasn't a question. When I left, you were 6 weeks. I didn't know yet. Her voice shook. I found out a month after you destroyed me. I tried to find you. I called every number I had. I went to your apartment and it was empty. Your lawyer told me you'd left instructions not to be contacted for any reason. Tears burned her eyes, furious and hot. So I had her alone. I raised her alone. You don't get to show up now, and I'm not asking for forgiveness. Damon's voice was raw. I'm not asking to be her father. He pressed his hands to his face, and when he lowered them, there were tears on his cheeks. I just wanted you to know the truth, that leaving you was the worst thing I've ever done, that I've thought about you every single day, that if I could go back, you can't. Mira's voice broke. You can't go back. You can't fix this. I know. They stood in the snow, 10 years of pain between them, while Lena watched from the bench with worried eyes. Mira wanted to scream, wanted to hit him, wanted to collapse and let someone else carry this for once. Instead, she straightened her spine and made herself look at him, really look at him, at the scars and the exhaustion and the way he held himself like a man who'd already accepted he deserved nothing. Her name is Lana, she said quietly. She's smart, practical. She collects rocks and asks questions about everything. She's never asked about you because I told her you weren't ready to be a father. I didn't tell her you were cruel. I just told her some people aren't built for it. Damon flinched like she'd struck him. But she's been asking more lately, wanting to know about her family, her history, and Mira's voice wavered. I don't know what to tell her anymore. Tell her the truth. Damon looked at her with quiet devastation. That I was a coward who chose the wrong way to keep her safe, that I don't deserve to know her, but that if she ever wanted to meet me, I would spend the rest of my life proving I've changed. Have you? The question came out sharp. Changed? I don't know. I'm trying. He pulled something from his pocket, a business card. I bought a building on Oak Street. I'm opening a bookshop, somewhere quiet, clean. The opposite of everything I grew up in. He held out the card. If you ever want to talk, if she ever wants to, I'll be there. Mira took the card, her fingers numb. And if we don't? Then I'll stay away. I promise. He stepped back, snow crunching under his boots. I'm sorry, Mira, for all of it. He turned to walk away, and Mira should have let him go. Should have taken Lena home and locked the door and pretended this night had never happened. But something in her cracked, the part that had carried this alone for so long, and words tumbled out before she could stop them. She plays piano. Damon stopped. She's been taking lessons for 2 years. She's good, really good. Mira's voice shook. She has your eyes, your focus, the way you used to look at things like you could see through them. A sob caught in her throat. She deserved to know you. Damon turned back and the look on his face was pure anguish. Can I meet her? Not now. Whenever you think it's right. If you think it's right. Mira looked at Lena, who'd stood up from the bench and was watching them with that too sharp gaze that missed nothing. I need to think about it. Of course. And if I say yes, there are rules. You don't get to walk back into her life and break her heart. You don't get to make promises you can't keep. You don't get to be anything less than honest. I won't be. I mean it, Damon. She's everything to me. If you hurt her, I won't. His voice was steady, absolute. I swear on everything I have left, I won't hurt her. Mira nodded slowly, then walked back to Lena. Her daughter looked up at her with questions in her eyes, so many questions, and Mira knew she couldn't avoid them anymore. Bug, she said gently, kneeling in the snow. That man I was talking to, his name is Damon. She took a breath. He's your father. Lena's eyes went wide. She looked past Mira to where Damon stood, still and careful in the falling snow. Then back to her mother. The one who wasn't ready. Yes. Is he ready now? The question was so simple, so direct, and Mira didn't have an answer. She looked back at Damon, who stood with his hands in his pockets, watching them like they were something precious he'd lost and found again. I don't know, Bug, but I think we should find out. Lena considered this with her usual seriousness. Then she stood, brushed snow off her jeans, and walked toward Damon with the fearless curiosity of a child who'd never learned to be afraid of strangers. Mira's heart hammered as she watched them face each other, this man who'd shattered her, and this girl who'd put her back together. Hi, Lena said. I'm Lena Halden. Do you actually want to meet me, or are you going to leave again? Damon crouched down to her level, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. I want to meet you more than anything in the world, and I promise I won't leave unless you tell me to. Lena studied him with those dark, unblinking eyes. You have a scar. How did you get it? I made some bad choices and had to fix them. It took a long time. Did you fix them? Most of them. I'm still working on the rest. Lena nodded slowly. Mom says people make mistakes. She says what matters is if you try to be better. Your mom is right. She usually is. Lena glanced back at Mira, then at Damon. I have questions. A lot of questions. I'll answer every one. Even the hard ones? Especially the hard ones. Lena seemed to weigh this, then stuck out her hand like a tiny business person. Okay, you can meet me, but if you lie or break promises, I'll tell you to leave and you have to go. Deal? Damon took her small hand in his scarred one, and something in his expression cracked open. Deal. They shook on it, solemn and strange in the snow, while Mira watched and tried not to cry. This wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't redemption. It was just the beginning of something impossible and terrifying and maybe, just maybe, necessary. Can we go home now? Lena asked, practical as ever. It's cold. Mira nodded, not trusting her voice. Damon stood, looking between them like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to stay or expected to go. The bookshop, Mira said finally. When is it opening? 2 weeks. Right after New Year's. We'll come see it, if Lena wants to. I want to, Lena said immediately. I like bookshops. Damon's smile was fragile, disbelieving. Then I'll be there. He stepped back, giving them space. Mira took Lena's hand and started walking, but after a few steps, Lena pulled free and ran back to Damon. "You should know," she said seriously. "I collect rocks. If you want to talk to me, you should learn about geology." Then she ran back to Mira, leaving Damon standing in the snow with wonder on his face. They walked home through the quiet streets, snow falling soft and steady. Lena was uncharacteristically quiet, processing. Mira didn't push. When they reached their apartment, Lena went straight to her room, and Mira stood in the kitchen, shaking. The business cards sat on the counter. Varga and Company Books. Opening January 2025. 10 years ago, Damon Varga had destroyed her. Tonight, he'd asked for a chance to build something new. And somehow, impossibly, Mira had said yes. She didn't know if it was forgiveness or foolishness, didn't know if he'd really changed or if this would shatter them all over again. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Lena deserved the truth. Deserved the chance to know her father if he was willing to show up and do the work. And if he broke his promises, Mira would make sure he understood exactly what he'd lost. She picked up the card, traced the embossed letters with her thumb, and whispered into the empty kitchen, "Don't make me regret this." Outside, the snow kept falling, and somewhere across town, Damon Varga stood in an empty storefront surrounded by boxes of books, crying for the daughter he'd just met and the woman he'd never stopped loving. The next morning was Christmas Eve. Mira woke to find Lena already dressed, sitting at the kitchen table with a notebook open in front of her. "What are you doing, Bug?" "Making a list of questions for Damon." Lena looked up, pencil poised. "Mom, did he really not know about me?" Mira poured coffee, choosing her words carefully. "No, he didn't know." "Why didn't you tell him?" "Because he left in a way that made it very clear he didn't want to be found. I tried, but I couldn't reach him. So I made the choice to raise you on my own." "Are you mad that he's back?" Mira sat down across from her daughter. "I don't know what I am yet. Confused, angry, scared." "Of what?" "That he'll hurt you, that he'll make promises and not keep them." Lena nodded seriously. "That's why I made him shake on it. Handshakes are binding." "Very binding," Mira agreed, fighting a smile. "Do I have to call him Dad?" "No, you call him whatever feels right to you." Lena added another question to her list, then looked up. "Do you still love him?" The question hit like a blow. Mira set down her coffee cup carefully. "I loved who he was 10 years ago. I don't know who he is now." "But you're going to find out?" "We're going to find out, together, if that's what you want." Lena considered this, then nodded. "I want to know if he's a good person, and if he knows anything about igneous rocks." They spent Christmas Eve quietly, baking cookies, watching movies, pretending everything was normal even though it wasn't. Mira's phone buzzed once, a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for giving me a chance. I won't waste it. D." She didn't respond, didn't know how. That night, after Lena was asleep, Mira stood at her window and looked out at the snow-covered street. Tomorrow was Christmas. The day after, they'd go back to their regular life. School, work, routine. But in 2 weeks, they'd walk into a bookshop and see if Damon Varga was the man he claimed to be. And Mira would finally have to decide if she could forgive him, not for leaving, but for coming back. The snow fell, the town slept, and somewhere in the dark, a man who'd spent 10 years running was finally standing still. The morning after Christmas, Mira woke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom window and the sound of Lena's voice drifting from the kitchen. For a moment, she let herself believe everything was normal, that yesterday had been just another quiet holiday, that Damon Varga was still a ghost she'd successfully buried. Then she heard what Lena was saying. "No, igneous rocks form from cooled magma. Metamorphic rocks are different. They change under heat and pressure." Mira sat up, heart pounding. She pulled on her robe and walked into the kitchen to find Lena sitting at the table with her phone propped against the sugar bowl, video call active. On the screen, Damon sat in what looked like an unfinished room, surrounded by boxes and bare walls. "Mom!" Lena looked up, excited. "Damon called to say Merry Christmas, and I'm teaching him about rocks." Mira's mouth went dry. She moved closer, and Damon's face came into focus on the small screen. He looked tired, but his expression softened when he saw her. "I'm sorry. he said immediately. I should have asked before calling. I just wanted to. I wasn't trying to overstep. It's fine. The words came out stiff. Lena, why don't you let me talk to Damon for a minute? Lena's face fell, but she handed over the phone and retreated to her room with exaggerated stomping that said exactly what she thought of being dismissed. Mira waited until she heard the bedroom door close, then looked at the screen. I meant what I said. There are rules. I know, I should have texted first. Damon ran a hand through his hair. I'm learning as I go here. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. Mira sat down, wrapping her hands around the phone. But calling her directly without asking me first, that's not okay. You're right. I'm sorry. He paused. Can I ask what the rules are, so I don't keep screwing up? Mira hadn't slept much the night before, but she'd made lists, boundaries, safety measures, things that would protect Lena if this went wrong. You don't call or text her without clearing it with me first. You don't make plans with her that I haven't approved. You don't buy her things to make up for lost time. She doesn't need guilt gifts. She needs consistency. And you don't lie to her, ever, even if the truth is hard. Damon nodded slowly. Okay. Anything else? Yes. You tell me what you're doing now, not the sanitized version, the real one, because if you're still involved in anything dangerous, this ends before it starts. His jaw tightened. I'm opening a bookshop. That's it. No side businesses, no connections to my old life. I've been clean for 6 years. What does clean mean? It means the last time I touched anything illegal was when I was working with federal investigators to take down the network my father built. Since then, I've been rebuilding. I bought the building on Oak Street with money I earned legitimately. I've been doing construction work, security consulting for companies that need to vet their systems. Nothing glamorous, nothing dangerous. Mira studied his face, looking for the tells she'd learned to read when they were married. The way his left eye twitched when he was hiding something. The way his voice went flat when he was lying. She saw exhaustion and anxiety and desperate honesty, but no deception. Show me, she said. Show you what? The bookshop, right now. Walk me through it. Damon stood without hesitation, and the camera swung as he moved through the space. Bare wooden floors, exposed brick walls, tall windows that let in winter light. Boxes everywhere, labeled in neat handwriting. Fiction. A to C, poetry, children's, history. A ladder leaned against empty shelves. Paint cans sat in one corner next to drop cloths. It was a textile warehouse in the 20s, Damon said, his voice slightly muffled as he walked. Sat empty for 15 years. I got it for a fraction of what it's worth because no one wanted to do the renovation work. He turned the camera to show a partially constructed reading nook, built-in shelves taking shape along the walls. I'm doing most of the work myself. It keeps me busy. When did you buy it? 8 months ago. Before I knew you were here. Before I knew about Lena. He paused. I chose this town because it was small and quiet and far enough from everything I used to be. I didn't know you'd made the same choice. Mira's throat tightened. That's a hell of a coincidence. Yeah, his voice was rough. It is. He showed her the rest, the small office in back, the bathroom he was still tiling, the kitchen area where he planned to serve coffee. It looked like exactly what he'd said, a man trying to build something clean and simple from scratch. Can I ask you something? Damon turned the camera back to his face. Why did you choose this town? Because no one here knew me. Because I could start over without people asking questions about where my husband went or why I was raising a baby alone. She met his eyes through the screen. Because it was far enough from the city that I felt safe. From me? From everything. She paused. I needed to disappear too. They sat in silence for a moment, connected by pixels and distance and 10 years of damage. The bookshop opens January 7th, Damon said finally. You said you'd come see it. Does that still stand? Mira thought about Lena's list of questions, about the careful hope in her daughter's eyes when she'd shaken Damon's hand in the snow. Yes, but we're setting ground rules first. You, me, and Lena, together. She gets a say in how this goes. When? Tonight, 6 o'clock. There's a diner on Main Street across from the bakery. Meet us there. Damon's expression shifted. Relief, anxiety, gratitude all at once. I'll be there. And Damon, don't call Lena again without asking me first. I won't. I promise. She ended the call and sat staring at the blank screen. From her bedroom, she heard Lena's door crack open. Is he in trouble? Her daughter asked, hovering in the hallway. No, Bug, but there are rules about talking to you, and he needs to follow them. Lena came into the kitchen and climbed into the chair across from Mira. Are you scared of him? The question caught Mira off guard. No, not scared, just careful. Because he left? Because he left, and because I don't know if he'll stay, and I don't want you to get hurt if he leaves again. Lena picked at a loose thread on her pajama sleeve. He said he wouldn't leave unless I told him to. I know, but people say a lot of things. Do you think he's lying? Mira wanted to say yes, wanted to protect her daughter from the possibility of disappointment. But Lena was staring at her with those two perceptive eyes, and Mira had promised herself she'd never lie to this child. I don't know yet. That's what we're going to find out. That evening, Mira and Lena walked to the diner through slush-covered streets. Holiday lights still glowed in shop windows, but the frantic energy of Christmas had faded into the quiet lull between celebrations. The diner was warm and bright, chrome and red vinyl booze, the smell of coffee and frying onions. Damon was already there, sitting in a corner booth with his back to the wall, old habits Mira realized from a life spent watching exits. He stood when he saw them, uncertain and formal in dark jeans and a gray sweater that made his eyes look even darker. Hi, Lena said, sliding into the booth across from him. I brought my questions. She pulled out the notebook, now filled with 3 pages of careful handwriting. Damon looked at it, then at Mira, something close to panic crossing his face. It's okay, Mira said, sitting beside Lena. She warned you. A waitress appeared, and they ordered hot chocolate for Lena, coffee for the adults, a basket of fries to share. When she left, Lena opened her notebook and fixed Damon with a serious stare. First question. Why did you leave my mom? Mira's chest tightened. She'd expected Lena to start with easier questions, favorite colors, hobbies, safe territory, but her daughter had never been one to waste time. Damon didn't look away from Lena's gaze. I left because bad people were threatening to hurt her, and I thought the only way to keep her safe was to make them believe she didn't matter to me. I was wrong. I should have found another way. What bad people? People who worked for my father. People who did illegal things and wanted me to help them keep doing those things. Like what things? Mira started to interrupt. This was too much for a 9-year-old, but Damon shook his head slightly. They hurt people who didn't pay them money. They sold things that weren't theirs to sell. They made people afraid so they could stay in power. He paused. My father built that world, and when he died, they wanted me to run it. I said no. So they went after your mother. Lena absorbed this, pencil poised over her notebook. Did you go to jail? No. I helped the police catch the people who were doing bad things. That's why it took so long. I had to make sure they all went to jail so your mother would be safe. Are they still in jail? Yes. The last one was sentenced 6 months ago. Good. Lena made a note. Second question. Do you have other kids? No. You're my only child. Do you want other kids? Damon's voice went soft. I want to be a father to you if you'll let me. That's all I want. Lena studied him, then flipped to the next page. Third question. What's your favorite book? The shift was so abrupt that Damon blinked. Mira almost smiled. This was pure Lena, testing in unexpected ways. East of Eden, Damon said after a moment. By John Steinbeck. What's it about? Brothers who make different choices. Good and evil and whether people can change. Can they? I hope so. The waitress returned with their order and Lena took a long sip of hot chocolate, leaving a foam mustache on her upper lip. Damon's expression softened watching her, and Mira felt something crack in her chest, anger and grief, and the terrible recognition that this man was looking at their daughter with the same wonder she'd felt the first time she'd held Lena in her arms. Fourth question, Lena continued, wiping her mouth. What kind of music do you like? I don't listen to much music anymore. I used to like jazz. Miles Davis, John Coltrane. Mom teaches music. She plays piano. I know, I remember. Damon's eyes flicked to Mira. She played Chopin when we first met, Nocturne in E-flat major. Mira's breath caught. She'd forgotten he remembered that. Forgotten that version of herself who'd played for him in her tiny apartment, windows open to summer heat, his hands on her waist as she stumbled through the measures. Do you play anything? Lena asked. No, I never learned. You should. Mom says music makes you understand feelings better. Your mom is probably right about that. They worked through more questions. His favorite food, whether he liked dogs or cats, if he believed in aliens. Safe questions that let Lena map the stranger across from her, turning him into something knowable. Damon answered each one with careful honesty, never deflecting, never making himself sound better than he was. Finally, Lena reached the last page and looked up. I have one more question, but it's for both of you. Mira tensed. Okay. Are you going to get married again? The question landed like a bomb. Damon froze, coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Mira felt heat flood her face. No, she said quickly. Bug, this isn't about that. This is about you and Damon getting to know each other. But you were married before. A long time ago. Things are different now. Lena looked between them, clearly unsatisfied with the answer. Do you still love each other? Lena, it's okay. Damon set down his cup. It's a fair question. He looked at Lena directly. I never stopped loving your mother, but love isn't always enough. Sometimes you hurt people so badly that love doesn't fix it. I hurt her. And even if she could forgive me, which she doesn't have to, that doesn't mean we'd get back together. Lena turned to Mira. Do you still love him? Mira's throat was tight. I loved who he was 10 years ago. I don't know who he is now. So you need to find out? Yes. Okay. Lena closed her notebook with finality. Then here are my rules. You both have to be honest with me. You don't fight in front of me. If you decide you can't be friends, you tell me, so I'm not surprised. And Damon has to prove he's staying before I decide if I want to call him Dad. Mira stared at her daughter, torn between pride and heartbreak at how grown up she sounded. Damon's voice was rough when he spoke. Those are good rules. I agree to all of them. Me too, Mira said softly. Good. Lena picked up a French fry. Can we go see the bookshop now? Mira blinked. Now? You said we'd go, and it's right down the street. Lena looked at Damon. Is that okay? Yes. If your mom says it's okay. Mira wanted to say no. Wanted to slow this down, maintain control, keep safe boundaries between her daughter and this man who'd shattered her life. But Lena was looking at her with pleading eyes, and Mira was so tired of being the one who decided everything alone. Okay, but just for a little while. They paid the check and walked through the cold evening air to Oak Street. The building stood 3 stories tall, its stone facade softened by warm light spilling from the large front windows. Damon unlocked the door and ushered them inside, flipping switches that brought the space to life. Lena gasped. It's so big! 1,500 square feet on this floor, office and storage upstairs. Damon watched Lena wander between the boxes, running her hands along the empty shelves. It'll look better when it's finished. I think it looks good now, Lena said. She stopped in front of a section marked children's books and looked back at him. Will you have books about rocks? I'll have whatever books you think I should have. Her face lit up. Really? Really? You can help me pick them out if you want. Mira watched them, this impossible scene, her daughter and the man who'd walked away talking about geology books in an unfinished shop like they were building something together. She felt unmoored, caught between the past and whatever this was becoming. Mom, look! Lena had found the reading nook, the built-in shelves almost complete, a window seat cushioned with fabric that looked handmade. Can I sit here? Sure, Bug. Lena climbed into the nook and curled up, small against the tall windows. Through the glass, Main Street glowed with lights, peaceful and safe. Damon stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching Lena with an expression that made Mira's chest ache. You built this yourself? She asked quietly. Most of it. I hired help for the electrical and plumbing, but the shelves, the nook, the refinished floors, that was me. Why a bookshop? Because books were the only thing that made sense when I was a kid. When everything else was violent and unpredictable, I could disappear into stories. I thought maybe I could give other people that same escape. Mira looked around the space, at the careful construction, the thoughtful layout, the way everything was designed to feel welcoming and safe. It's good. What you're building here. Thank you. They stood in awkward silence until Lena called out from the window seat. Damon, do you live upstairs? I do. It's not much. Just one room and a bathroom, but it's enough. Can we see it? Lena, Mira said sharply. That's his private space. It's okay. Damon looked at Mira. If you're comfortable with it. Mira hesitated, then nodded. They climbed narrow stairs to the second floor, where a door opened into a single large room. A bed in one corner, neatly made. A small kitchenette. A desk covered in papers and blueprints. Boxes still unpacked against the walls. What struck Mira most was how empty it felt. Not physically, but emotionally. No photographs. No personal touches. Just functional furniture and the bare minimum needed to exist. Lena wandered to the desk and picked up a book sitting there. You're reading about rocks? Damon's ears went slightly red. I told you I'd learn. Lena beamed at him, and Mira felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the first crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. They stayed for another hour. Lena asked questions about the renovation, about which books would go where, about whether there would be a section for poetry. Damon answered everything with careful attention, never dismissing her ideas, treating her thoughts like they mattered. When Mira finally said they needed to go home, Lena hugged Damon goodbye without hesitation. He stood very still, arms coming up slowly to return the embrace, his face a mixture of joy and devastation. Can we come back? Lena asked as they reached the door. Whenever your mom says it's okay. Lena looked at Mira hopefully. Can we come back this weekend? I want to help organize the children's section. Mira glanced at Damon, who was very carefully not pushing, just waiting. We'll see. Outside, Lena chattered the whole way home about the bookshop, about the books she wanted Damon to stock, about how cool it would be to have a reading nook like that in their apartment. Mira listened with half her attention, the other half still back in that sparse upstairs room, thinking about a man who'd spent 10 years running and had finally stopped in the same town where she'd built her life. That night, after Lena was asleep, Mira sat at her kitchen table with a glass of wine and Damon's business card. Her phone buzzed. Thank you for tonight, for letting me meet her properly, for giving me a chance. D. She stared at the message for a long time before responding. She likes you, but liking isn't enough. You have to show up. Every time. No excuses. I will. I promise. Don't promise. Just do it. Okay. She set the phone down and closed her eyes. This was terrifying. Letting him back into their lives, watching Lena open her heart to someone who'd already proven he could walk away. But the alternative, keeping Lena from knowing her father out of fear, felt like its own kind of damage. The weekend came. Saturday morning, Lena woke up early and announced she wanted to go to the bookshop. Mira made her wait until after breakfast, until a reasonable hour, until she'd called Damon to make sure he was actually there and prepared for company. We'll be there in 20 minutes, she said when he answered. I'll be ready. He was waiting by the door when they arrived, and Mira noticed he'd cleaned up, freshly showered, newer clothes, an attempt at making himself presentable. Lena ran past him to the children's section and started pulling books from boxes, organizing them by category with intense focus. She's always like this? Damon asked, watching her work. Always. When she's interested in something, she commits completely. She gets that from you. Mira shot him a look. You don't know what I'm like anymore. No, but I remember. You learned music the same way, all in, no half measures. That was a long time ago. Doesn't mean it's not still true. Mira didn't have an answer for that, so she walked over to help Lena sort books. They worked together, the three of them, falling into an easy rhythm. Damon took Lena's direction without question, moving books where she wanted them, asking her opinion on placement, treating her like a partner in the work. Around noon, he disappeared upstairs and came back with sandwiches and lemonade. They ate sitting on the floor, surrounded by books and boxes, and it felt almost normal, like a family spending a Saturday together. Except they weren't a family. They were three people trying to figure out if they could build something from the wreckage of the past. "I have a piano," Damon said suddenly. "Upstairs. It's old and probably needs tuning, but it works." I thought, if you ever wanted to play. Mira's heart stuttered. "Where did you get a piano?" "It was in the building when I bought it. Previous owner left it behind. I was going to sell it, but..." He stopped. "I couldn't." Lena perked up. "Mom should play something." "I don't think..." "Please, Mom, you never play anymore." It was true. Mira had stopped playing shortly after Lena was born, too exhausted and heartbroken to find music in herself. She taught it, guided children through scales and simple melodies, but she hadn't played for herself in years. "I'm out of practice." "I don't care," Lena said. "I want to hear you." Mira looked at Damon, who said nothing, just waited. And maybe it was the wine from last night still loosening her defenses, or maybe it was the way Lena was looking at her with such hope, but she found herself nodding. "Okay, just one piece." They went upstairs. The piano sat in the corner of Damon's sparse room, an old upright with yellowed keys and chipped finish. Mira sat on the bench, hands hovering over the keyboard, and felt the past 10 years pressing down on her shoulders. She started with Chopin, not the nocturne Damon had remembered, but something darker, more complex. Ballade No. 1 in G minor. Her fingers found the notes, rusty at first, then more certain. The music filled the room, angry and beautiful and full of everything she hadn't let herself feel. Lena sat on the floor, entranced. Damon stood by the window, very still. Mira played through the cascading runs, the furious passages, the moments of fragile beauty between storms. When she finished, her hands were shaking. "That was amazing," Lena breathed. Mira stood abruptly. "We should go. It's getting late." "But Mom..." "Lena, now." Her daughter recognized the tone and didn't argue. They gathered their things and headed for the door. Damon followed them down. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "For helping with the books. For playing." Mira nodded, not trusting her voice. As they stepped outside, Damon caught her elbow gently. "I shouldn't have asked you to play. I'm sorry." "It's fine." "It's not. I could see it upset you." She pulled her arm away. "You don't get to read me anymore. You don't get to know what upsets me." "You're right. I'm sorry." They stood in the cold, Lena already halfway down the street, and Mira felt tears burning behind her eyes. "That piece," she said roughly, "I learned it after you left. I played it when I was so angry I couldn't breathe, when I was pregnant and scared and completely alone. And I haven't touched it since Lena was born because it reminds me of the worst time of my life." Damon's face went pale. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I never would have..." "You didn't know a lot of things. And that's the problem." She wiped her eyes roughly. "You can't just show up and expect everything to be okay. You can't ask me to play music or remember who we were or pretend like the last 10 years didn't happen. I'm not pretending. I know what I did. I know what I took from you." "Do you?" "Because I don't think you understand what it was like, being pregnant and alone. Having strangers ask where my husband was and having to lie because the truth was too humiliating. Raising a child who asked about her father and having to tell her he didn't want us." "I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix it, Damon. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I spent thinking I wasn't enough, that I'd done something wrong, that I was so easy to throw away." Her voice cracked. "Sorry doesn't change the fact that you broke me." He looked at her with devastation in his eyes. "I know, and I would give anything to undo it, but I can't. All I can do is try to be better now, try to show you and Lena that I've changed." "Then prove it. Stop asking me to remember the past. Stop trying to rebuild what we had. Focus on being a father to Lena. That's all I need from you." "Okay." His voice was barely a whisper. "Okay." Mira turned and walked away, leaving him standing in the snow. Lena was waiting at the corner, worry creasing her small face. "Are you okay, Mom?" "Yeah, Bug, I'm okay." But she wasn't. That night, alone in her room while Lena slept, Mira cried for the first time in years. For the girl she'd been, for the life she'd lost, for the impossible situation she was in now. Because despite everything, despite the anger and the pain and the fear, part of her still loved Damon Varga, and she hated herself for it. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in careful distance. Mira threw herself into preparing lesson plans for the spring semester, organizing her classroom, anything to avoid thinking about Damon or the way her hands had trembled on those piano keys. Lena asked twice if they could visit the bookshop again, and both times Mira found excuses, too busy, too cold, maybe next week. On the third day, Lena stopped asking and started watching her mother with quiet, knowing eyes that made Mira feel transparent. New Year's Eve arrived gray and heavy with the threat of snow. Mira had planned to spend it quietly at home, just her and Lena and sparkling cider at midnight. But when she picked Lena up from her friend Sophie's house that afternoon, Sophie's mother caught her at the door. "We're having a little gathering tonight," Jennifer said, her smile warm and genuine. "Just neighbors? Nothing fancy? You should come. Bring Lena." Mira started to decline, but Lena was already nodding enthusiastically beside her. "Please, Mom, Sophie says they're going to have fireworks." So that evening, Mira found herself walking 3 blocks through the cold to a house lit up with strings of white lights and the sounds of laughter. Inside, the party was exactly as promised. Neighbors and their children, platters of food on every surface, music playing softly in the background. Safe. Normal. Everything Mira had built her life around. She was helping Lena fill a plate with appetizers when she heard Jennifer's voice rise above the crowd. "Oh, you made it! Come in, don't be shy!" Mira turned, already knowing what she'd see. Damon stood in the doorway, snowflakes melting on his dark coat, holding a bottle of wine and looking like he wanted to disappear. His eyes found hers across the room, and she saw the same trapped panic she felt. Jennifer was already pulling him inside, taking his coat, introducing him to people. "This is Damon Varga. He's opening that beautiful bookshop on Oak Street. Damon, this is everyone." Lena lit up when she saw him. "Damon, you're here!" She ran over and grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the food table. Damon let himself be led, his gaze still on Mira, silently asking if this was okay. She gave him the smallest nod and watched as her daughter proudly introduced him to her friends. "This is Damon. He's my dad." The words hit Mira like a physical blow. Her daughter had never called him that before, had specifically said she wanted him to prove himself first. But now she was saying it casually, naturally, like it was a fact she'd always known. Damon crouched down to Lena's level. "You don't have to call me that if you're not ready." "I know, but I decided I am." Lena looked at him seriously. "You showed up every time you said you would. That counts." Mira watched Damon's face crack open with emotion, watched him blink back tears as he hugged Lena carefully, like she was something precious he didn't quite believe he was allowed to hold. "Thank you," he said, voice rough. "That means everything to me." The party continued around them. Children ran through the house in packs, adults clustered in conversations, the evening settling into comfortable chaos. Mira kept her distance from Damon, circulating through different groups, but she was always aware of where he was, talking to Mr. Chen from the hardware store, helping Jennifer's husband carry more chairs from the garage, sitting on the floor with a group of kids who were showing him their favorite toys. He fit in easier than she'd expected. People liked him. He was quiet, but not withdrawn, helpful without being intrusive. Several times she caught neighbors asking him about the bookshop, and he answered with genuine enthusiasm, his face lighting up when he talked about the reading programs he wanted to start. Around 9, the children started getting restless with anticipation for midnight. Someone suggested charades, and teams were formed amid groaning and laughter. Lena grabbed Mira's hand and Damon's, pulling them both onto the same team. "We're going to win," she declared with absolute confidence. The game was ridiculous and loud and exactly what Mira needed. She found herself laughing for the first time in days as elderly Mrs. Patterson acted out Jurassic Park with dramatic intensity, as Sophie's father tried to mime Romeo and Juliet and ended up looking like he was having a seizure. When it was Damon's turn, he drew a card, read it, and went pale. Mira saw his hesitation before he started moving, stiff, awkward gestures that were clearly meant to be dancing. "Ballet!" someone shouted. He shook his head, continued the awkward movements. "Dancing with the Stars!" "Footloose!" Damon kept going, adding more elaborate gestures, and Mira suddenly understood. She'd seen him move like that once before, in their tiny apartment, when she'd tried to teach him to dance, and he'd been terrible at it, all sharp edges and self-consciousness. "Dirty dancing," she said quietly. Damon stopped, met her eyes, nodded. Their team erupted in cheers, but Mira barely heard them. She was too busy remembering the night he'd referenced, how they'd laughed until they couldn't breathe, how he'd finally given up and just held her close, swaying to music only they could hear. The moment stretched between them, heavy with memory, until Lena tugged on Mira's sleeve. "Mom, it's your turn." Mira drew her card. "The piano." She sat on an invisible bench and mimed playing, and her team guessed it in 10 seconds. Easy, safe. Nothing like the minefield of Damon's turn. The game continued until nearly 11, when Jennifer announced it was time to bundle up for the fireworks. Everyone pulled on coats and hats and filed into the backyard, where someone had set up chairs and blankets. Children claimed the best viewing spots, while adults poured hot cider and coffee from thermoses. Mira found a place near the back, but Lena had other ideas. She positioned herself between Mira and Damon on a blanket, creating a unit whether Mira wanted it or not. The cold seeped through the blanket into Mira's jeans, and she wrapped her arms around herself. Without a word, Damon shrugged off his scarf and held it out to her. "I'm fine," she said. "You're shivering." "I said I'm fine." He withdrew the scarf, and they sat in tense silence while around them, neighbors laughed and talked, counting down the minutes to midnight. Lena leaned against Mira's side, and Mira wrapped an arm around her daughter, grateful for the warmth and the distraction. At 11:55, someone started the countdown. Voices joined in, children shrieking with excitement. Mira closed her eyes and thought about the year that was ending, about Christmas Eve in the music hall, about Damon walking back into her life, about every careful decision she'd made since. 10, 9, 8. She opened her eyes and found Damon watching her. Not the fireworks, not the celebration. Her. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. The sky exploded with color. Gold and silver and cascading stars, reflected in the snow and in the faces turned upward. Lena squealed with delight, pointing at each burst. Around them, people hugged and kissed and shouted well wishes. Damon didn't move. Neither did Mira. They just sat there on opposite sides of their daughter, watching light bloom and fade against the winter sky. When the show ended and people started gathering their things, Lena yawned hugely. "Can Damon walk home with us?" she asked. "We're only 3 blocks away, Bug. We don't need—" "I'd like to," Damon said quietly, "if that's okay." Mira wanted to say no, wanted to maintain the boundaries she'd barely managed to keep all evening. But Lena was looking at her with pleading eyes, and she was tired of always being the one who said no. "Fine, but just to our door." They said their goodbyes and walked through quiet streets, most of the town already inside or heading home. Lena held both their hands, swinging between them like a bridge, chattering about the fireworks and the party, and how Mrs. Patterson was definitely the best at charades. At their building, Lena hugged Damon goodnight and ran upstairs, leaving Mira and Damon standing in the cold. "Thank you for letting me walk you back," he said. "Lena wanted you to." "Still, thank you." He paused. "She called me Dad tonight." "I heard. I wasn't expecting it. I thought it would take longer for her to trust me. Kids are more forgiving than adults." Mira's voice came out harder than she intended. "They haven't learned yet that people leave." Damon flinched. "I'm not going to leave. I know you don't believe that, but it's true. You can't promise that. No one can." "I can promise I'll try. That I'll show up every day and do the work." Mira looked at him, really looked at him, and saw exhaustion in the lines around his eyes, determination in the set of his jaw. He looked like a man fighting a battle he knew he might lose. "The bookshop opens next week," she said, "January 7th, 10 a.m. Lena will want to be there." "And you?" Mira's throat tightened. "I don't know." "Okay, that's okay." He stepped back, giving her space. "Happy New Year, Mira." "Happy New Year." She watched him walk away, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the cold. Then she went upstairs to find Lena already in her pajamas, bouncing with residual energy. "That was the best New Year's ever," Lena announced. "Did you have fun?" "It was nice. You and Damon barely talked. We were at a party, Bug. There were lots of people to talk to." Lena gave her a look that said she wasn't fooled. "Are you still mad at him?" Mira sat on the edge of Lena's bed. It's more complicated than being mad. Why? Because what he did hurt me very badly. And even though I understand why he did it now, that doesn't make the hurt go away. But you're trying to forgive him, right? The question was so earnest, so full of hope, that Mira felt her chest constrict. I'm trying to figure out if I can trust him again. That's different from forgiveness. Do you think you can? I don't know yet. That's what we're all trying to find out. Lena was quiet for a moment, then said, I think he's trying really hard. I think so too. And I think he loves you. The way he looks at you. It's the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. Mira's breath caught. Bug, it's okay, Mom. I'm not saying you have to love him back. I'm just saying I noticed. Lena yawned again. Can we go to the bookshop opening? Yes, we'll go. Promise? Promise. Satisfied, Lena burrowed under her covers. Mira kissed her forehead and retreated to her own room, where she stood at the window and watched snow begin to fall. Somewhere across town, Damon was in his sparse apartment above an almost finished bookshop, probably lying awake and thinking about the same impossible situation. The week passed in a blur of preparation. Mira returned to teaching, her classroom full of energetic children coming off holiday sugar highs. Lena went back to school, came home each day with new stories about her friends, about what she was learning, about the countdown to the bookshop opening. Damon texted Mira every evening with updates. The delivery of the register, the final inspection passing, the sign being hung above the door. Each message was brief, informative, never pushing for more than she'd given permission for. She responded with single words of acknowledgement, maintaining the careful distance she needed. On January 6th, the day before the opening, Lena came home from school with an announcement. I want to make something for Damon. For good luck. Like what? I don't know. What do people give for good luck? They spent the evening crafting a card, Lena carefully drawing a bookshop on the front with colorful spines filling the shelves. Inside, she wrote in her neat handwriting, Congratulations on your new beginning. Love, Lena. Should I put "and Mom?" she asked. Mira hesitated, then nodded. Sure, Bug. That night, after Lena was asleep, Mira's phone buzzed. Tomorrow's the day. I know you promised Lena you'd come, but I want you to know. If it's too hard, if you need space, I understand. I don't want you to feel obligated. D. She stared at the message for a long time before responding. We'll be there. Lena made you something. She didn't have to do that. She wanted to. Thank you for letting her be part of this. Mira didn't respond to that. She turned off her phone and tried to sleep, but her mind kept circling back to tomorrow, to walking into that bookshop and seeing what Damon had built, to watching her daughter celebrate a father she was still learning to know. Morning came cold and bright. Lena was up before her alarm, already dressed and vibrating with excitement. Can we go early? I want to see it before everyone else gets there. The opening is at 10, Bug. That's when we'll go. But Mom, Lena, 10 o'clock. Her daughter pouted, but didn't argue further. They had breakfast, bundled up against the cold, and walked to Oak Street at exactly 9:55. Even from a block away, Mira could see the changes. The building looked alive now, lights glowing behind clean windows, the sign above the door reading Varga and Company Books in elegant gold letters. A small crowd had already gathered outside. Neighbors, curious townspeople, the local reporter with her camera. Jennifer from the New Year's party waved when she saw them. At precisely 10 o'clock, the door opened. Damon stepped out wearing dark slacks and a gray sweater, nervous energy radiating off him. He saw the crowd and visibly steadied himself. Thank you all for coming, he said, voice carrying in the cold air. I wanted to create a space for this community, somewhere people could discover stories, find quiet, feel welcome. I hope this becomes that place for you. He cut a ribbon Jennifer's husband had strung across the door, and people applauded. Then everyone filed inside, exclaiming over the transformation. The bookshop was beautiful. Natural light poured through the tall windows, illuminating shelves organized by careful categories. The reading nook Lena had discovered weeks ago was now complete, stocked with cushions and throws. A small cafe area occupied one corner, the scent of fresh coffee filling the air. Soft music played from hidden speakers. Jazz, Mira noticed, the kind Damon had mentioned liking. Lena ran straight to the children's section and gasped. The books she'd helped organize were perfectly displayed, and on a small table sat a collection of geology guides with a handwritten sign, Lena's Recommendations. "Mom, look!" She grabbed Mira's hand and pulled her over. "He did this for me." Damon appeared beside them. "You said I should have books about rocks, so I got the best ones I could find." Lena threw her arms around him. "This is perfect, thank you." He hugged her back, and when he straightened, his eyes met Mira's over their daughter's head. She saw gratitude there, and fear, and desperate hope. "It looks good," Mira said quietly. "What you've done here." "Thank you. That means a lot." People swarmed around them, asking questions, browsing shelves, claiming seats in the reading nook. Damon moved through the crowd with quiet confidence, answering questions about inventory, about his plans for reading groups and author events, about the coffee bar that would officially open next week. Mira found herself drifting through the shop, taking in details. The poetry section was extensive, thoughtfully curated. The local history shelf featured books about the town and surrounding area. The mysteries were organized alphabetically, the romances by subgenre. Everything showed care, attention, genuine love for books, and the people who read them. She ended up in a quiet corner near the back where a small shelf held music books, theory guides, composer biographies, sheet music collections. Her fingers traced the spines until they landed on a book of Chopin's complete works. "I wasn't sure if you'd want that section," Damon's voice came from behind her. "But I hoped maybe someday—" "Someday what?" She turned to face him. "Someday you might play again. Not because I asked, because you wanted to." "I played for years, Damon. At home after you left, it was the only thing that made sense when nothing else did. I meant play for joy, not pain." The distinction hit her harder than she expected. "I don't know if I remember how to do that." "Maybe you could learn again." He paused. "The piano upstairs. I had it tuned. Professional came last week. If you ever wanted to use it, you could. No strings attached. Just an offer." Before Mira could respond, Lena appeared with the card she'd made. "I almost forgot. This is for you." Damon took it carefully, read the message, and his composure cracked. Tears slipped down his cheeks as he pulled Lena into another hug. "Thank you, sweetheart. I'm going to keep this forever." "You're crying," Lena observed. "Happy tears. Because this is the best gift anyone's ever given me." They stayed for 2 more hours, watching as the shop filled and emptied and filled again. Mr. Chen bought 3 mystery novels. Mrs. Patterson spent 20 minutes in the poetry section before emerging with an armful of books. Sophie and her family came through, and Sophie dragged Lena off to explore while the adults talked. Jennifer cornered Mira near the coffee bar. "He seems wonderful, and the way he looks at you—" "Don't," Mira said quickly. "I'm just saying it's obvious he adores you. And Lena is so happy." "It's complicated." "The best things usually are." Jennifer squeezed her arm and moved away, leaving Mira alone with her coffee and her tangled thoughts. By 1 o'clock, the crowd had thinned. Lena was curled up in the reading nook with a book about volcanoes, completely absorbed. Damon was helping the last few customers at the register, explaining the loyalty program he'd set up. Mira found herself climbing the stairs to the 2nd floor without fully deciding to. The door to Damon's apartment was open, and she stepped inside. The piano stood in the corner, exactly where it had been, but different now, polished, the keys gleaming white instead of yellowed. She sat on the bench and lifted the lid. The tuning was perfect, each note clear and true. Her hands found the keys almost without thought, and she started to play. Not Chopin this time, something simpler. Eric Satie's Gymnopédie No. 1. Gentle, melancholy, honest. She didn't hear Damon come up the stairs, didn't know he was there until the piece ended, and she looked up to find him standing in the doorway. "I'm sorry," she said. "I shouldn't have come up without asking." "You can come up whenever you want. I meant what I said. The piano is yours to use." She stood, suddenly aware of how intimate this felt. The 2 of them alone in his space, the piano between them like a confession. "Why did you tune it?" she asked. "You don't play." "Because you do, because I wanted there to be music here." He stepped into the room. "Because I've spent 10 years in silence, and I thought maybe, if you ever wanted to, this could be a place where you found sound again." "You can't do this," Mira whispered. "Do what?" "Say things like that. Offer me things I didn't ask for. Try to give me back what you took. I'm not trying to give it back. I know I can't. I'm just... He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I'm trying to build something new, something better. And if that includes a space where you feel safe enough to play, then that's what I want to build. Why? The word came out raw. Why does it matter to you if I play or not? Because music was who you were. It was the first thing I loved about you, the way you'd lose yourself in it, the way nothing else existed when you were playing. And I took that from you. I made it painful. So if I can give you back even a fraction of that joy, I will. Mira's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. You can't fix this with a piano, Damon. You can't fix any of it. I know, but I can try to create spaces where healing is possible. Even if you never forgive me, even if we never... He stopped. Even if all I ever am to you is Lena's father, I still want you to have this. The tears spilled over despite her best efforts. Damon took a step forward, then stopped himself, hands clenching at his sides. Is it okay if I... No, she said, wiping her eyes roughly. You can't hug me. You can't comfort me. You lost that right. Okay, I'm sorry. They stood in his empty apartment with a piano between them and 10 years of damage neither of them knew how to repair. Below, Mira heard Lena's laugh, bright and untroubled, and it steadied her. I should go check on Lena. Of course. She walked past him to the door, then stopped. The bookshop is good, Damon. You should be proud. Thank you. And the piano. Thank you for that too, even if I don't know what to do with it yet. She left him there and went downstairs to find her daughter, who looked up from her book with a knowing smile. Did you play the piano? How did you know? I heard it. It was pretty. Ready to go home, Bug? Can we come back tomorrow? Mira looked around the bookshop, at the careful order, the warm light, the way Damon had built something clean and good from nothing. Then she looked at Lena's hopeful face. Yeah, we can come back. They left as the winter afternoon faded into evening, and Mira didn't look back to see if Damon was watching them go. But she knew he was, could feel his gaze like a weight between her shoulder blades, heavy with everything unsaid. That night, Lena fell asleep early, exhausted from the excitement. Mira poured herself a glass of wine and sat at the kitchen table with her phone, staring at the last message Damon had sent. She typed and deleted a dozen responses before finally settling on something simple. The piano sounds beautiful. Thank you for taking care of it. His response came almost immediately. It was waiting for you. Everything I have is waiting for you. Mira closed her eyes, pressed the phone to her chest, and let herself feel the full weight of what she was trying to do. She was trying to forgive a man who destroyed her, trying to build a future from the shattered pieces of the past, trying to be brave enough to let herself hope again. And she didn't know if she could do any of it. But tomorrow, she'd go back to the bookshop. She'd let Lena browse the children's section and ask Damon questions about the geology books. She'd maybe, possibly, climb those stairs again and play something on the tuned piano. And slowly, carefully, one impossible day at a time, she'd find out if broken things could truly be made whole. They did go back the next day, and the day after that. The bookshop became part of their routine in ways Mira hadn't anticipated, stopping by after school for Lena to browse new arrivals, weekend mornings spent in the reading nook, while Damon worked the register, quiet afternoons when the shop was empty, and Mira would find herself climbing those stairs to the piano. She didn't tell Damon when she played, would slip upstairs while he was helping customers, sit at the bench, and let her fingers remember what they'd once known. Simple pieces at first, Mozart sonatas, Bach preludes, songs that required technical precision but not emotional vulnerability. The piano responded beautifully, each note clear and resonant in the small apartment. Sometimes she'd finish and find a cup of tea waiting on the desk, still steaming. Damon never interrupted, never asked what she'd played or why, just left small gestures that said he knew she was there, that her presence mattered. January gave way to February, winter settling deep into the town's bones. School continued, steady and predictable. Lena thrived, her friendship with Sophie growing stronger, her rock collection expanding to include specimens Damon special ordered from a geology supplier. She'd started calling him Dad without hesitation, would run to hug him when they arrived at the bookshop, would text him photos of interesting stones she found. Watching them together cracked something open in Mira's chest, the easy affection, the way Lena would explain complex geological concepts while Damon listened with complete attention, the inside jokes developing between them. This was what she'd wanted for her daughter, what she'd grieved not having. But it also terrified her, because Lena was all in, heart completely open, and if Damon left, if this fell apart, her daughter would be destroyed. On Valentine's Day, Mira came downstairs from playing to find the bookshop decorated with paper hearts the local elementary school had made. Lena was at the register with Damon, carefully ringing up a customer's purchase while he supervised. "Mom," she waved, "Damon's teaching me how to use the register." "I see that." The customer, Mrs. Patterson, smiled warmly. "You have a beautiful family." Mira's stomach clenched. "Oh, we're not—" "Thank you," Damon said quietly, handing Mrs. Patterson her bag. "Have a wonderful Valentine's Day." After she left, Mira crossed to the register. "You shouldn't let people think—" "I know, I'm sorry, it's just—" He looked at Lena, who was reorganizing the bookmarks. "Sometimes I forget we're not. Well, we're not, and it's important that people understand that." "You're right. I'll be clearer next time." But he looked hurt, and Mira hated that she cared, hated that his pain still affected her. That evening, after they got home, Lena presented Mira with a handmade Valentine's card. "I made one for you and one for Damon," she said proudly. "His has books on it. Yours has music notes. They're beautiful, Bug. Do you think you'll ever give Damon a Valentine?" Mira set the card down carefully. "That's not really our relationship. But you like him, I can tell." "It's complicated." "Everything with you two is complicated." Lena flopped onto the couch with dramatic exasperation. "Why can't you just be nice to each other?" "I am nice to him." "You're polite? That's different. You smile at him like teachers smile when they're trying not to be mad. He smiles at you like it hurts." Mira sat beside her daughter, shaken by the observation. "When did you get so perceptive?" "I notice things, like how you play piano more now, and how Damon keeps books about teaching music behind the register, even though they're not for sale, and how you both look sad when you think no one's watching." "Bug, I'm not saying you have to love him again, but maybe you could be friends. Real friends, not just people who are nice because of me." Mira pulled Lena close. "I'm trying. I promise I'm trying." "I know. You're both trying really hard. Maybe that's the problem." The next morning, Mira arrived at school to find a small package on her desk. Inside was a book, The Complete Chopin Nocturnes, Professional Edition, leather-bound. A note in Damon's handwriting read, "In case you want sheet music that isn't falling apart, no expectations. D." She ran her fingers over the cover, throat tight. The edition was expensive, chosen with clear knowledge of what a serious pianist would want. He must have special ordered it. At lunch, she texted him, "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to." "Happy Valentine's Day." "Damon, I know. No expectations. I just thought you should have good sheet music, that's all." She wanted to be angry at the gesture, at the way it blurred lines she was trying to keep clear. But when she opened the book that evening and saw the crisp, unmarked pages, the careful notation, she felt only gratitude. The following Saturday, the bookshop was hosting its first author event, a local mystery writer reading from her new novel. Lena had insisted they go, and Mira had reluctantly agreed. The shop was packed when they arrived, every seat taken, people standing along the walls. Damon had set up a small podium near the window. He looked nervous as he welcomed everyone, thanking them for coming, introducing the author with genuine enthusiasm. The reading went well, the Q&A after even better. When it ended, people lingered to buy signed copies, to chat, to explore the shop. Mira helped Lena pick out a new book, then found herself in the poetry section, pulling a Mary Oliver collection from the shelf. She was reading Wild Geese when she heard raised voices from the front of the shop. "I'm telling you, I know who you are." Mira looked up to see a man in his 50s confronting Damon at the register, his face flushed with anger. Damon had gone very still, the careful blankness Mira recognized from years ago settling over his features. "I think you're mistaken," Damon said quietly. "I'm not mistaken. Varga. I worked construction in the city 15 years ago. I knew your father, knew what kind of man he was." The shop had gone quiet, everyone watching. Lena stood frozen by the children's section, eyes wide. "My father's been dead for over a decade," Damon said, voice level. "I'm not him." "No, but you're his son."
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it? What are you really doing here? This bookshop some kind of front? Mira moved before she fully decided to, crossing the shop to stand beside Damon. "I think you should leave." The man looked at her, surprised. "Lady, you don't know who you're defending." "I know exactly who I'm defending, and I'm asking you to leave his shop." "You one of his girls? He paying you to—" "I'm the mother of his child," Mira said, voice hard as steel.
"And if you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police." The man's eyes darted between them, clearly recalculating. Then he scoffed. "Whatever. Just don't say I didn't warn you when this place goes under investigation." He stormed out, and the shop slowly came back to life. Awkward murmurs, uncertain glances at Damon. The author looked stricken, unsure whether to stay or go. Damon took a breath, then addressed the room. "I apologize for that disruption. My father was involved in illegal activities when I was young. I left that life over 15 years ago and have worked hard to build something different. If anyone has concerns, I'm happy to discuss them privately. Otherwise, I hope you'll judge this shop by what it is, not by my last name." It was a good response, honest, direct, not defensive. A few people nodded. Others still looked uncertain. Slowly, the event wound down, people buying their books and leaving with polite goodbyes that felt more cautious than they had an hour ago. When the last customer left, Damon locked the door and leaned against it, exhaustion written across his face. Mira realized Lena was crying quietly in the corner. "Bug, it's okay," Mira said, going to her. "That man was mean. He said bad things about Dad." Damon crossed to them immediately. "Hey, kiddo, I'm okay. He was just confused about who I am." "But he said your father was bad. Is that true?" Damon knelt down to her level. "Yes, my father did bad things. I grew up in that world. But I left it because I knew it was wrong. That's why it took me so long to come back. I had to make sure none of that could touch you or your mom." "But he called this shop a front. What's a front?" "It's when people pretend something is legitimate to hide illegal activity. But this shop is real. Everything here is real." Lena looked at him seriously. "Promise?" "I promise. On everything I love, this is exactly what it looks like, a bookshop. Nothing more." She seemed satisfied by that, but her eyes were still red. Damon pulled her into a hug, and over her shoulder he met Mira's gaze. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for stepping in." He was being cruel. He wasn't wrong, though, about my father, about where I came from. But he was wrong about who you are now. Something shifted in Damon's expression, hope mixed with disbelief. "You really believe that?" Mira looked at the bookshop around them, at the careful way Damon held their daughter, at the life he'd built from nothing. "I'm starting to," she said. That night, after Lena was in bed, Mira sat at her kitchen table and thought about the man's accusations, about the fear she'd felt watching someone attack Damon publicly, about the way she'd defended him without hesitation. She'd meant what she said. She was starting to believe he'd changed. But believing wasn't the same as trusting, wasn't the same as forgiving. Her phone buzzed. "I'm sorry Lena had to see that. I never wanted this life to touch her. It's not your fault. That man was out of line. Still, I hate that she was scared, that she had to hear those things about my father. She's resilient, and she loves you. That matters more than what some stranger said." There was a long pause before his next message. "Can I ask you something? Why did you defend me?" Mira stared at the question, trying to articulate something she barely understood herself. "Because what he said wasn't fair. Because you've worked hard to be different. Because Lena was watching, and I wanted her to see that we stand up for people we care about." "We?" She closed her eyes, typed before she could overthink it. "Yes. We." The days after the confrontation brought a subtle shift. Word had spread about the incident, and for a while, traffic to the bookshop slowed. Some people stayed away, uncertain or disapproving. But others, neighbors who knew Damon, regular customers, people who'd seen the care he put into the shop, made a point of coming by, of buying books, of showing support. Jennifer brought her book club for an impromptu meeting in the reading nook.
Mr. Chen stopped by daily for coffee and conversation.
Mrs. Patterson declared loudly to anyone who'd listen that Damon Varga was a good man, and anyone who thought otherwise was a fool. Mira found herself spending more time at the shop, a silent show of solidarity. She'd work on lesson plans at a corner table while Lena did homework, would help shelve returns, would sometimes play the piano upstairs when the shop was quiet. It felt like taking a stand, though she wasn't entirely sure what she was standing for. One afternoon, in late February, she came downstairs from playing to find Damon closing up early. The shop was empty except for Lena, who was curled up in the reading nook with her geology book. "Everything okay?" Mira asked. "Yeah, just slow today. Thought I'd close and take Lena to get ice cream, if that's okay with you." "It's freezing outside."
Ice cream is good any time of year, that's science. Lena perked up. "Can we, Mom, please?"
"Sure, Bug." They walked 3 blocks to the ice cream parlor, breath fogging in the cold air. Lena ordered mint chocolate chip, Damon got coffee, and Mira found herself choosing salted caramel. They sat in a booth by the window, and for a moment it felt almost normal, like a family out for a Saturday treat. "I've been thinking about adding events," Damon said, stirring his ice cream absently. "Music nights, maybe. Local artists performing. I thought, if you wanted, you could play sometime." Mira's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. "Play? In public?" "Just an idea. No pressure. But the shop has good acoustics, and I thought people might enjoy live music. We could do it monthly, different performers. You could be first, if you wanted. Or not. Whatever feels right." "I haven't performed in 10 years. I know. But I've heard you playing upstairs. You're better than you ever were." "Mom, you should do it!" Lena's eyes sparkled. "I've never heard you play for other people." "That's because I don't play for other people." "Why not?" "Because performing meant being vulnerable, meant opening herself up to judgment and criticism. Because she'd stopped playing publicly when Damon left and had never found the courage to start again." "I'll think about it," she heard herself say. Damon smiled, soft and genuine. "That's all I'm asking." They finished their ice cream and walked back through the darkening afternoon. Lena ran ahead, leaving Mira and Damon a few steps behind. "You don't have to do the music night," Damon said quietly. "I meant it. No pressure." "I know, but maybe—" She paused, choosing words carefully. "Maybe it would be good for me, to play for joy again, like you said." "Only if you want to." "I want to think about it." They walked in silence for a moment, then Damon spoke again. "That thing you said the other night, about standing up for people we care about. Did you mean that?" Mira's heart hammered. "Yes." "So you care about me? Even a little?" She could have deflected, could have made it about Lena or the bookshop or anything other than the truth, but she was tired of hiding. "Yes, Damon. I care about you. I'm still angry, and I'm still scared, and I don't know if I'll ever fully trust you again. But I care." He stopped walking, and she stopped too. They stood on the sidewalk while Lena played in a snow pile ahead, and Damon looked at her like she'd given him something precious. "That's more than I deserve," he said, voice rough. "Probably. But it's what you've got." He reached out like he might touch her hand, then stopped himself. Is it okay if I hope? That someday you might—" "Don't," Mira said, not unkindly. "Don't hope for more than this. Not yet." "Okay, I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. Just keep showing up. That's what matters." They started walking again, and Mira felt lighter somehow, like naming the truth had released pressure she hadn't known she was carrying. She cared about Damon. It didn't fix the past, didn't guarantee the future, but it was real and honest, and maybe that was enough for now. March arrived with the first hints of spring, longer days, melting snow, mud season in full force. The bookshop had weathered the storm of negative attention and come through steadier, its customer base loyal and growing. Damon started the reading programs he'd planned: children's story time on Saturday mornings, a book club for adults on Thursday evenings. Mira found herself saying yes to the music night. The first one was scheduled for mid-March, and terror gripped her as the date approached. She practiced obsessively, running through pieces until her fingers ached, second-guessing every choice. The night of the performance, she almost canceled 3 times. But Lena was so excited, had invited Sophie and her family, had told her whole class her mom was performing. So Mira put on a simple black dress, applied minimal makeup, and let Damon drive them to the bookshop, even though it was only 4 blocks because she was shaking too hard to walk steadily. The shop had been transformed, chairs arranged in rows facing the piano, which had been moved downstairs for the occasion. String lights draped from the ceiling, the coffee bar was set up with refreshments. And people. So many people. Every seat was filled, neighbors and strangers and familiar faces all turned expectantly toward the piano. "I can't do this," Mira whispered to Damon as they stood in the small office. "Yes, you can. There are too many people. I'm going to freeze up. I'm going to—" "Mira." He took her hands, and she was too panicked to pull away. "You are the most talented pianist I've ever heard. You can do this. And if you freeze, if you need to stop, everyone here will understand. They're not here to judge. They're here because they want to support you." "How do you know that?" "Because I told them. When people bought tickets, I explained that you hadn't performed in years, that this was a big step. They're on your side." She looked at their joined hands, at the steadiness in his grip. "You told people that? I want you to succeed, whatever that looks like for you." Jennifer appeared in the doorway. "Ready when you are. No rush." Mira took a breath, squared her shoulders, and walked into the main shop. Applause greeted her, warm, encouraging. Lena sat in the front row between Sophie and Damon, practically vibrating with excitement. Mira sat at the piano and adjusted the bench. The keys were familiar under her fingers, solid and real. She'd chosen her program carefully, pieces that meant something to her, that told a story of survival and growth. She started with Debussy's Clair de Lune, gentle, nostalgic, the first piece she'd learned to truly love. Then Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor, darker, more turbulent, representing the years of struggle. Finally, she played Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, joy and sorrow intertwined, complex and beautiful and utterly American. She lost herself in the music, forgot about the audience, forgot about everything except the conversation between her hands and the piano. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of perfect silence. Then the room erupted in applause. People stood, cheering. Lena's face was streaked with tears. And Damon was looking at her like she'd hung the moon. Mira stood on shaking legs and bowed. The applause continued, overwhelming and wonderful. She'd done it. She'd played for people again. And it hadn't destroyed her. It had freed her. Afterward, people crowded around to thank her, to tell her how beautiful the music was, to ask when she'd perform again. Jennifer hugged her fiercely. Mrs. Patterson declared it the best evening she'd had in years. Lena attached herself to Mira's side and wouldn't let go. When the shop finally emptied and it was just the 3 of them, Lena yawned hugely. "That was the best night ever," she said. "You were amazing, Mom." "Thank you, Bug." "Can I sleep at Sophie's? Her mom said I could, and they live right next door, and please." Mira started to say no, then caught Jennifer's confirming nod from the doorway, where she'd returned to collect Lena. "Okay, but good behavior." "Always," Lena hugged her, then hugged Damon. "Dad, you should tell Mom how good she was. She needs to hear it more." Then she bounded off with Jennifer, leaving Mira and Damon alone in the quiet bookshop. "You want some tea?" Damon asked. "Or wine? I have both upstairs." "Wine sounds good." They climbed to his apartment, and Mira realized this was the first time they'd been alone together, truly alone, since that night in the snow outside the music hall. The awareness made her nervous as Damon poured wine and handed her a glass. "You were incredible tonight," he said. "Lena's right. You need to hear that." "Thank you for setting this up, for pushing me to do it." "I didn't push. I just offered the space." "Same thing." She sipped her wine, looking around the apartment. It was less sparse now, a few photographs on the desk, books stacked everywhere, signs of a life being lived. "You've made this place feel like home." "I'm trying. It's strange having a home after so many years of not having one." "Where did you go, in those years after you left?" Damon sat on the edge of his bed, leaving the chair for her. "Everywhere. Nowhere. First year I was just running, staying ahead of my father's people. Slept in cheap motels, moved every few days. Then I started working with the feds, and they put me up in safe houses. After that," he paused. "After that, I worked construction jobs, lived in rented rooms, Never stayed anywhere longer than 6 months. Couldn't risk getting attached.
That sounds lonely.
It was, but it felt necessary. He met her eyes. I thought about you constantly. Wondered if you were okay, if you'd moved on, if you hated me. Never imagined you were pregnant. If I'd known, what would you have done? I don't know. Come back, probably. Tried to protect you both somehow. And they probably would have killed all 3 of us. The stark truth of that settled between them. I'm glad you didn't know then, Mira said quietly. Because Lena exists, and she's everything. She is. She's so much better than either of us. Smarter, braver, more certain of herself. She gets that from you, the certainty. She gets her kindness from you, her music. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking wine, the night settling around them. Mira felt the exhaustion of performance catching up, but she didn't want to leave yet, didn't want to go back to her empty apartment. Can I ask you something? She said. That day you came back, Christmas Eve, how did you know where to find me? I hired an investigator 6 months ago. After the last of my father's people went to prison, I started looking for you. It took a while. You'd changed your name back to Halden, kept a low profile. But when I found out you were here teaching music, his voice caught. I almost didn't come. Thought maybe you'd built a good life, and I'd only ruin it. But I had to know. Had to see if you were okay. And when you saw me in the music hall, I knew I couldn't leave without trying to explain, without trying to make things right, even if right was impossible. He looked at her intently. Do you regret that I came back? Mira considered the question honestly. Sometimes, when it's hard, when Lena's asking questions I don't know how to answer, when I'm lying awake wondering if I'm making a huge mistake, but other times, she gestured around the apartment, at the piano in the corner. Other times I think maybe this is what we both needed, a chance to finish what we started, to end things properly if nothing else. Is that what you think this is? An ending? I don't know what this is. I just know I'm not ready to call it anything else yet. Damon nodded slowly. Okay, that's fair. Mira finished her wine and stood. I should go. It's late. I'll walk you home. You don't have to. I want to. They walked through the quiet streets, the town asleep around them. At her building, Mira turned to say goodnight and found Damon watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. Thank you for tonight, he said. For playing, for being here, for giving me this chance. You're welcome. They stood there close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could smell the faint scent of soap and coffee that clung to him. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. For a moment, she almost wanted him to. Then he stepped back, breaking the spell. Good night, Mira. Good night. She went inside and climbed the stairs to her apartment, let herself in, and stood in the dark living room with her heart racing. Something had shifted tonight. Some wall she'd been maintaining had developed a crack, and she didn't know if that terrified her or thrilled her or both. Spring arrived in earnest, transforming the town from monochrome winter into bursts of green and color. Cherry trees bloomed along Main Street, their petals drifting like snow in the warm breeze. The bookshop's windows stayed open, letting in fresh air and the sounds of the world coming back to life. Mira's music nights became a monthly fixture, each one drawing larger crowds. She played different repertoire each time, stretching herself, rediscovering the joy she'd thought lost forever. Other musicians began approaching Damon about performing, a local violinist, a jazz trio, a high school choir. The bookshop was becoming what he'd envisioned, a gathering place, a space for community and art, but the real change was quieter, happening in the spaces between the public moments. Mira found herself texting Damon about small things. A funny thing Lena said, a question about a book, observations about nothing in particular. He responded with the same careful warmth, never pushing, always present. They'd started having coffee together on Sunday mornings while Lena slept late, sitting in the bookshop before it opened and talking about everything and nothing. It felt like friendship. It felt like more than friendship. It felt terrifying and inevitable all at once. One Saturday in late April, Lena announced she wanted to have her 10th birthday party at the bookshop. We could invite my whole class, she said, bouncing with excitement, and have a scavenger hunt with books, and Dad could help, and we could have cake in the reading nook.
Mira's first instinct was to say no, to keep that boundary between their private life and this new reality they were building. But Lena was looking at her with such hope, and Damon had already proven himself reliable in ways that mattered. Let me talk to Damon first. Make sure he's okay with 20 kids destroying his bookshop. He'll say yes. He always says yes to me. She was right. When Mira brought it up that evening, Damon's face lit up. I'd love that. We could do a treasure hunt, hide clues in different sections. Maybe give them each a book as a party favor? You don't have to do that. It's expensive. I want to. It's her 10th birthday. That's important. They planned it together over the next 2 weeks, Mira handling invitations and cake, while Damon designed an elaborate scavenger hunt that would take the kids through every corner of the shop. Watching him work on it, carefully crafting clues, testing the route, making sure it was challenging but not too hard, Mira felt something shift in her chest. He was good at this. Good at being a father. Good at showing up. The party fell on a brilliant May afternoon, warm enough that they could spill out onto the sidewalk. 29-year-olds descended on the bookshop with the chaos of a small hurricane, but Damon handled it with surprising calm, organizing them into teams, explaining the rules, sending them off with enthusiasm. Mira watched from the coffee bar as he guided the hunt, as Lena laughed and ran with her friends, as the bookshop filled with joy. Jennifer appeared beside her with 2 cups of coffee. He's good with them, she observed. Yeah, he is. And with you. Mira shot her a look. Don't start. I'm just saying, you two have gotten closer. Everyone's noticed. We're co-parenting, that's all. Mira, honey, I've known you for 5 years. I've never seen you look at anyone the way you look at him when you think no one's watching. I don't. You do. And he looks at you the same way. Like you're the answer to every question he's ever asked. Mira's hands tightened around her coffee cup. It's not that simple. Love never is. But maybe it doesn't have to be complicated either. Maybe it can just be 2 people choosing each other every day, despite the past. Before Mira could respond, a cheer went up from the children's section. The scavenger hunt was complete, Lena's team victorious. Damon presented them with small medals he'd made from cardboard and ribbon, and every child received a wrapped book chosen specifically for their interests. When the party wound down and parents came to collect Sugar Rush children, Lena hugged Damon so hard he stumbled. Best birthday ever, she declared. Thank you, Dad. Anything for you, kiddo. After the last guest left, the 3 of them surveyed the wreckage. Books scattered everywhere, crumbs on every surface, paper decorations wilting in the corners. I'll clean up, Damon said. You 2 should go home and relax. We'll help, Mira said. It'll go faster with 3. They worked together, restoring order, and Mira found herself humming as she shelved books. Lena was sprawled in the reading nook, exhausted but happy, showing Damon each gift she'd received with detailed commentary. When the shop was finally clean, twilight had settled outside. Damon locked the door and turned to find Mira watching him. What? He asked. Nothing, just thank you for today, for making it special. It was my pleasure. She deserves special. Lena yawned from the reading nook. Can we order pizza? I'm starving. So they did, eating in the shop as darkness fell, talking and laughing like they'd done this 1,000 times before, like they were a family. After Lena fell asleep in the reading nook, worn out from the day's excitement, Damon carried her upstairs to his apartment and settled her on his bed. Mira covered her with a blanket and smoothed hair back from her face. She's out cold, she whispered. Let her sleep. I can drive you both home later. They went back downstairs and Mira found herself gravitating to the piano. She played quietly, something soft that wouldn't wake Lena. Damon sat nearby, listening, and when she finished, he spoke into the silence. I need to tell you something. Mira's stomach clenched. Okay. I've been offered a chance to sell the building. Developer wants to turn it into condos. The offer is, it's a lot of money. Enough that I'd never have to worry again. Fear spiked through her. Are you going to take it? No. But I wanted you to know it existed. Wanted you to know I'm choosing to stay. Not because I have to, but because this is where I want to be. Because of the bookshop? Because of you and Lena, because I've spent 10 years running and I'm done. This is home. Your home. Mira's heart hammered. Damon, I'm not asking for anything.
I just wanted you to know. Whatever happens between us, whatever we become or don't become, I'm staying. I'm choosing this life. I'm choosing you, even if you never choose me back." She stood from the piano bench, crossed to where he sat, and before she could second-guess herself, she kissed him. It was gentle at first, tentative, like neither of them quite believed it was happening. Then Damon's hands came up to cup her face, and Mira deepened the kiss, 10 years of anger and grief and desperate longing pouring into it. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Damon rested his forehead against hers. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "Probably not, but I'm tired of punishing us both for the past." "What does this mean?" "I don't know yet, but I'm willing to find out." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I'm scared, Damon. Terrified you'll leave again, that I'm making a mistake, that I'm setting us all up for more pain." "I know, I'm scared too. But I also know you've been here every day for 6 months. You've shown up for Lena, for me, for this community. You've proven you've changed. I want to keep proving it, every day, for the rest of my life, if you'll let me." Mira kissed him again, softer this time, and it felt like a promise, like the beginning of something new built on the ruins of what they'd been. They sat on the floor of the bookshop, backs against the shelves, holding hands like teenagers. "We need to be careful," Mira said, "for Lena's sake. We can't rush this." "Agreed. We take it slow, see how it goes. And if it doesn't work, then we figure it out, but we stay in Lena's life, both of us. That's non-negotiable." "Okay." They sat in silence for a while, then Damon spoke again. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" "Yes." "When I was working with the feds, when everything was dangerous and uncertain, I used to imagine what I'd say to you if I survived. I wrote letters I never sent, practiced conversations I'd never have. And the thing I wanted to tell you most was that leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. Not because of the danger or the loneliness, but because I chose wrong. I thought keeping you alive meant staying away, but what I should have done was fight harder to find another way, to keep us both safe and together." Mira's eyes burned with tears. "You were trying to protect me. I was trying to control the outcome, and in doing so I took away your choice. I decided for you what was safe, what was right. I should have trusted you to face it with me. I wouldn't have known what to do. I was 23 and naive. You were stronger than you knew. You proved that by surviving what I did to you, by raising Lena alone, by building this life." Mira wiped her eyes. "We can't change the past." "No, but we can learn from it. And I've learned that you deserve a partner, not a protector. Someone who trusts you to make hard choices, who faces things with you instead of for you. Can you be that person?" "I'm trying. I'll keep trying." They talked until late, about the years between, about the people they'd become, about what they wanted for the future. When Mira finally checked her phone, it was past midnight. "I should get Lena home." "Stay," Damon said. "It's late, and she's already asleep. You can take my bed. I'll sleep on the floor." "Damon, just sleep. Nothing else. I just don't want you walking home alone this late." So Mira stayed, curled up beside Lena on Damon's bed while he made himself a nest of blankets on the floor. She lay awake for a long time, listening to Lena's soft breathing, to Damon's movements as he settled, and thought about the strange path that had brought them here. She woke to morning light and the smell of coffee. Lena was already up, sitting at Damon's desk and drawing while he made breakfast in the tiny kitchen. "Morning, sleepyhead," Lena said cheerfully. "Dad's making pancakes." "I see that." Mira caught Damon's eye over Lena's head, and he smiled, soft, warm, real. They ate breakfast together, and it felt natural, easy, like they'd been doing this for years instead of one night. Over the next few weeks, they settled into a new rhythm. Dinner together twice a week. Saturday mornings at the bookshop. Long walks after Lena went to bed, talking about everything and nothing. Slow, careful, building trust one day at a time. Lena noticed, of course. She'd grin every time she caught them holding hands, would make exaggerated gagging sounds when they kissed, but her eyes were happy. She liked seeing them together. One evening in June, Mira was playing piano in Damon's apartment when Lena appeared in the doorway. "Can I ask you something?" Mira stopped playing. "Of course, Bug. Are you and Dad together? Like, Together? Mira glanced at Damon, who gave a small nod. They'd talked about this, about when to make it official to Lena. We're figuring things out, Mira said carefully, taking it slow. But yes, we're together. Are you going to get married again? We're not thinking that far ahead yet. We're just seeing how things go. Lena considered this. Okay, but if you do get married, I want to help plan it, and I get to be the maid of honor.
Deal, Damon said, laughing.
Summer arrived, school let out, and Lena was with them almost constantly. They fell into domesticity, cooking meals together, movie nights, trips to the beach an hour away. Damon taught Lena to swim properly. Mira taught them both to make her grandmother's pasta sauce. They built a life from shared moments. But in July, reality intruded. Mira's phone rang late one night, a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Halden? This is Detective Morrison with the state police. I'm calling about Damon Varga. Her blood went cold. What about him? We need to ask him some questions about his father's former associates. There's been activity suggesting someone's trying to rebuild the network. We need Mr. Varga's cooperation. He's been out of that life for years. We know. That's not what this is about. We just need his insight. Can you have him contact me? After she hung up, Mira sat in her dark apartment, fear coiling in her stomach. This was what she'd been afraid of, that the past would come back, that danger would find them despite everything. She called Damon immediately. We need to talk. He came over within 20 minutes, and she told him about the call. She watched his face go carefully blank, the old defenses rising. It's probably nothing, he said. Just routine questions. Or it's not. Or they're rebuilding and you're in danger again. Mira, don't minimize this. If there's any chance, then I'll handle it, the same way I handled it before. I'll cooperate, I'll help them, and I'll make sure it doesn't touch you or Lena. That's exactly what you did last time, and it destroyed us. Her voice was too loud. She lowered it, aware of Lena sleeping in the next room. I can't go through that again, she said, quieter but no less intense. I can't watch you disappear into something dangerous while I wait and worry. So, what do you want me to do? Ignore it? Let them rebuild? I want you to include me, to let me help decide what we do. Together. Damon looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. You're right. We're partners. We decide together. Thank you. He called the detective back that night, on speaker, so Mira could hear. The questions were straightforward. What did he know about certain individuals? Had anyone contacted him recently? Did he have any insight into operations? Damon answered honestly, provided what information he could, and when asked if he'd testify if needed, he said yes, but only under protection for his family. We can arrange that, Detective Morrison said, but it may not be necessary. We're gathering evidence. This is just preliminary. After he hung up, Damon pulled Mira close. I'm sorry, I thought this was over. Maybe it is. Maybe they just needed to ask questions. And if it's not, then we face it. Together. Like you said, partners. The weeks that followed were tense. Damon heard nothing more from the police, but the shadow of the call lingered. Mira found herself watching for threats that didn't materialize, jumping at unexpected sounds. Lena sensed the tension and grew quieter, more watchful. Finally, in early August, Detective Morrison called again. We made arrests. 4 people trying to restart operations. Your testimony won't be needed. We had enough evidence without it. You're clear. The relief was overwhelming. Mira cried when Damon told her, all the fear and stress of the past month pouring out. He held her while she shook, whispering reassurances. It's over, he said. Really over this time. How do you know? Because they got everyone. The detective confirmed it. There's no one left to rebuild. My father's legacy is finally dead. That night, they told Lena together. She listened seriously, asked careful questions, then hugged them both. I'm glad you're safe, she said simply. The summer wound down, school approaching. On the last weekend before classes started, Damon proposed something unexpected. I want to take you both somewhere. A trip. Just us. Where? Lena asked. There's a cabin in the mountains about 3 hours from here, near a lake. I thought we could spend a long weekend, hike, swim, just be together. Mira felt herself tense. old instincts screaming that leaving was dangerous, that safety meant staying put. But she looked at Damon's hopeful face, at Lena's excitement, and made herself breathe through the fear. Okay, let's do it. They left on a Friday morning, Lena chattering in the back seat while Mira navigated and Damon drove. The cabin was exactly as advertised, rustic but comfortable, nestled in pine trees with a lake view. They spent the weekend hiking trails, swimming in the cold lake water, cooking over a fire pit. On their last evening, they sat by the water watching sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Lena was skipping stones, leaving Mira and Damon on the shore. "This was good," Mira said. "I'm glad we came." "Me too." Damon took her hand. "I've been thinking about something."
What? Moving. Not away, he added quickly, seeing her expression. Just, your apartment is small, and mine is basically one room above the shop. I thought maybe we could find a house. Something with space for all of us. Mira's heart raced. That's a big step. I know, and if you're not ready, I didn't say I wasn't ready. I'm just... She paused, choosing words carefully. I want to make sure we're doing this for the right reasons. Not just because it's convenient or because of Lena. I'm doing this because I love you, because I want to build a life with you, because every morning I wake up and choose you, and I want to keep choosing you in bigger and bigger ways. Tears pricked her eyes. I love you too. I have for a while. I was scared to say it. And now? Now I'm still scared. But I'm more scared of not trying. He kissed her as the sun sank below the mountains, and Lena whooped from the water's edge. Finally. Does this mean we're getting a house? They laughed, and Mira called back, Maybe, Bug, we'll see. But she knew the answer was yes, knew that she was ready to take this leap, to build something permanent with Damon. They found a house in September, a small 2-story with a yard, 3 bedrooms, and a sunroom perfect for a piano. The mortgage was more than Mira's rent, but with both their incomes combined, it was manageable. They moved in October, Lena claiming the biggest bedroom and immediately decorating it with her rock collection. On their first night in the house, after Lena was asleep, Mira and Damon stood in the empty living room surrounded by boxes. We really did this, she said. We really did. Are you scared? Terrified, but in a good way. She knew what he meant. This was vulnerability, commitment, trust, everything she'd sworn she'd never risk again. And yet here she was, choosing it anyway. Winter came again, bringing them full circle to the anniversary of Damon's return. On Christmas Eve, they went to the same music hall where it had all begun. The same string quartet played, the same candles flickered, but everything was different now. They sat together this time, Mira, Damon, and Lena, a family in truth, not just an aspiration. When the music ended, they walked out into the snow, and Damon stopped on the steps where he'd first asked for 5 minutes. You know what I'm grateful for? He said. What? That you said yes that night. That you gave me a chance when you had every reason not to. I'm grateful too, for all of it, even the hard parts. Lena tugged on both their hands. Can we go home now? I want hot chocolate. They walked home through the quiet streets, Lena between them, and Mira thought about the journey that had brought them here. The pain and the healing, the fear and the courage, the ending that had become a beginning. That night, after Lena went to bed, Damon pulled a small box from his pocket. I was going to wait, he said. Make it a big gesture, plan something elaborate, but I don't want to wait anymore. He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. Mira Halden, will you marry me? Not to fix the past or because we have a daughter, but because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life choosing you. Mira looked at the ring, at his face, at the life they'd built together from broken pieces. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. He slipped the ring on her finger, and they kissed in the living room of their home, snow falling outside, their daughter safe upstairs. It wasn't the fairy tale ending Mira had once dreamed of as a young woman. It was better, real and hard-won, and built on honest foundation. They married the following spring in the bookshop, surrounded by books and friends and the community they'd built. Lena was the maid of honor, exactly as she'd demanded, wearing a dress she'd picked out herself and carrying a bouquet of wildflowers. Jennifer cried through the whole ceremony, Mrs.
Patterson declared it the most beautiful wedding she'd ever attended. Mira wore a simple white dress and played piano before the ceremony. Not the pieces from her recitals, but something she'd composed herself, a song about finding your way home. Damon cried watching her play, and when they exchanged vows, his voice shook with emotion. "I promise to show up," he said, "every day, every moment you need me. I promise to choose you, to trust you, to build this life with you as partners. I promise to love Lena as the gift she is. And I promise that wherever you are is home." Mira's vows were simpler. "I promise to let you in, to trust you with my heart even when it's scary, to build something beautiful from what we've been through. And I promise that this time we write the ending together." They kissed as husband and wife, and the bookshop erupted in cheers. 2 years later, on another Christmas Eve, they returned to the town square where lights twinkled in the winter darkness. Lena was 12 now, gangly and growing into the brilliant young woman she'd become. She walked between them, one hand in each of theirs. "Remember when we first did this?" Lena asked. "When Dad came back and everything was weird?" "I remember," Mira said. "It's better now, way better." "Yeah, Bug, it is." They stood under the lights, watching snow begin to fall, and Damon pulled them both close. "What's the rule?" he asked Lena. She grinned. "Show up, keep choosing each other." "That's right." And they did. Every day, through arguments and joy, through ordinary moments and extraordinary ones, through all the messy, beautiful work of being a family. They showed up. They chose each other. And they built something that lasted, not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. The bookshop thrived. Mira's music program at school expanded. Lena grew up surrounded by books and music and two parents who loved her fiercely. And on quiet evenings, Mira would play piano in their sunroom while Damon and Lena listened, and she'd feel grateful for the impossible journey that had brought them here. From broken to whole, from pain to healing, from a cold Christmas Eve reunion to a life full of warmth and love and second chances. The past couldn't be erased. The years lost couldn't be recovered. But they'd found something better than erasing the past. They'd learned to build a future that honored it without being defined by it. And in the end, that was enough, more than enough. It was everything.